When the application was approved, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. My fingertips couldn't stop trembling, and my eyes were red, but I didn't even notice it. No one knew that I was reborn, 21 years old, the second before I confessed to Li Yuli. That day, I wore the dress he spent a lot of money to customize for me, and booked the most luxurious hotel in northern Beijing. I invited many friends to witness the beginning of our love. Li Yuli has been by my side since I can remember. My parents are doctors without borders and their whereabouts are uncertain. I met them very few times a year. Li Yuli spent almost the first half of my life with me, happy and unhappy. Everyone in the circle tacitly agreed that I was Li Yuli's child bride in the previous life. A few good friends knew that I was going to confess and gave me a lot of advice, which made me blush. I was secretly looking forward to it in my heart, but no one expected that Li Yuli would reject me. Just like in the last life, Li Yuli seemed to have guessed what I was going to do. His brows were slightly furrowed, and two fingers were rubbing the words that were brewing to reject me. The emotion in his eyes was unclear at that time. I thought Li Yuli was just worried that I was younger than him and couldn't distinguish love, so I smiled and said, "Uncle, I like you. When I see you, my heart will beat faster unconsciously. When I can't see you, I will miss you madly. It's an emotion that I can't suppress no matter what. I am sure that I love you." Others followed suit and ended in a mess, and I was still smiling that day, but the smile didn't reach my eyes. When he was about to speak, I took a step ahead. "Uncle, the research project I conquered for a year ended last week. I'm very happy, so I want to celebrate." Li Yuli was stunned. My friends also looked at each other and were about to speak. I glanced at them lightly. They smiled awkwardly and silently put the banner, promise her, in their hands behind them. A confession ended in vain. After the show, Li Yuli and his friends smoked in the corridor. He leaned against the wall, playing with the golden relief lighter with his bony hands. The flame flickered. His friend laughed teasingly. "I thought Xiaoyu was going to confess to you today. I didn't expect it to be a false alarm." Li Yuli closed his eyes lightly with a faint smile on his lips. "Don't guess what a little girl is thinking. I don't have any other intentions towards Jinyu. I take care of her just because of my friendship with her family." His friend didn't believe it. "You are the one who is in the dark. Look at the look in your little girl's eyes. Do you think we are stupid? If you are really innocent, why did you go to warn the little boy when he confessed his love to your little girl? He even pretended to be her boyfriend." Li Yuli didn't say anything. I didn't listen anymore and retreated into the darkness. Li Yuli was like this in my previous life. He had been too good to me, but he was unwilling to admit it. After returning home, submitted an application for Doctors Without Borders. After my parents died in the war zone, I wanted to inherit their legacy. It's just that my previous life ended before I could even start. Luckily, God took pity on me and gave me a chance to start over. I looked at the time of the report and the calendar next to me. I took out a pen and silently marked the day of the report. Coincidentally, that day was Li Yuli's birthday. Suddenly, there was a knock on my door. It was Li Yuli. He knocked twice as usual and came in, but this time there was a girl following him. The girl was sitting in a wheelchair, wearing a white dress. Her face was pale, and there was a hint of melancholy in her eyes. She looked so fragile. "Jinyu, come here," he said to me. I didn't move, but just glanced at the girl. She was Fang Yueshi. I thought there was no confession from me. Li Yuli would not bring her to me, but I didn't expect that what was supposed to happen would still happen. "Jinyu." Li Yuli frowned and called me again. Seeing my indifferent expression, Fang Yueshi lowered her eyes and said softly, "Yuli, it's okay. It's normal that Miss Shin didn't like me when we first met. If she minds my presence, I'll just go back to the suburban villa. I don't have legs, so I can't go anywhere. I can live anywhere. You don't have to live here," she said, tears in her eyes, but they didn't fall. She was like a delicate little flower, pretending to be strong. Li Yuli frowned even deeper, and there was a bit of disappointment in his eyes when he looked at me. "Jinyu, uncle. Whoever you want to arrange to live in the villa can live in the villa, and you don't need to tell me. You are the master of this house." My voice was very flat, and no one could hear any clues. But it was full of thorns when it fell into Li Yuli's ears. He thought I was throwing a tantrum. "Jinyu, you don't have to talk to me in this tone. I brought Yueshi to see you today because I want you to meet your young aunt. She lost both legs to save me in the earthquake 3 years ago. I need to be responsible for her. If you still want to stay in this family, put away your temper and don't bother Yueshi." He glanced at me with a warning. I wanted to speak, but I remained silent in the end. In fact, I can't blame him. I have an extreme possessiveness towards Li Yuli. From childhood to adulthood, I hope that he only has eyes for me and the only female companion around him is me. So over the years, he has not had any scandals. Even if a woman dares to touch porcelain, I will deal with it. All his preferences and exceptions are me. So in the last life, when he wanted to marry Fang Yueshi, I collapsed. Do I have to repay the life-saving grace with my body? I thought about it for a long time. It cost me my life. I still can't figure it out, but now I have figured it out. Some things are just hard to figure out. Fang Yueshi is going to live here. The room next to Li Yuli was once mine. Before Li Yuli took me in, he secretly asked his friends for advice, and then drew the blueprints himself and renovated the whole room. It was turned into a beautiful pink princess house. He also bought a lot of limited edition dolls and placed them at the head of my bed. He raised me like a princess. From childhood to adulthood, he always said, as long as it is something that Jinyu likes and can make Jinyu happy, I will do it. I hope our Jinyu grows up healthy and becomes a happy little princess. At that time, his eyes were full of gentle and affectionate love. It made me fall, but he stayed out of it from beginning to end. In the room, Li Yuli leaned against the door frame, glanced at me coldly, and said, I asked Aunt Chen to clean up the guest room on the first floor. You can stay on the first floor for the time being. I didn't say anything, but folded all the clothes and put them in the suitcase. When I stood up and habitually took the doll on the bedside, my hand stopped. Li Yuli's eyes also moved to the doll, and saw that I didn't move for a long time. He said, I'll take the doll down for you later. I took a deep breath, retracted my gaze, and smiled. No, give it to my aunt, Li Yuli. I don't want it anymore. What are a few dolls? It was sincere before, but it's nothing now. Jinwei, are you still angry with me? Li Yuli asked coldly. Why should I be angry with my uncle? I asked back. My uncle also has his own life. Now you have someone you like and want to protect. I should be happy for you, right? Li Yuli's eyes darkened, his thin lips opened and closed, but he couldn't make a sound. When I left with my suitcase, Fang Yueshi was not far from the door, and she looked at me with a bit of sarcasm, just like in the last life. She pretended to be a white lotus on the surface, but in fact she was targeting me everywhere and cried at the slightest disagreement. The tears of the weak are always easy to win sympathy. Miss Shin, I'm sorry for you. If it wasn't inconvenient for me, Yuli wouldn't do this. My hand holding the lever tightened, and when I wanted to pass her and leave directly, she suddenly grabbed my wrist, and I shook it off reflexively. Ah! Fang Yueshi's wheelchair fell down the stairs uncontrollably, screaming, and the servants in the villa rushed over. Yuli, save me, save me. Li Yuli heard the words. She ran out of the room in panic, pushed me away, and rushed over to grab the handrail to prevent the wheelchair from rolling down. I was stunned and my throat was tight. It's not me. The wheelchair was stuck on the stairs, and several servants blocked the road. Li Yuli quickly picked up Fang Yueshi and walked in front of me. The servants also cooperated to move the wheelchair over. Yuli, I was scared to death. I thought I was going to die. Her eyes were all red, and the fear in her eyes could not be faked. After Li Yuli comforted Fang Yueshi, she looked at me angrily. Shin Jinwei, are you crazy? If Yueshi really gets into trouble, you will be suspected of murder. Do you know that? I bit my lower lip, feeling aggrieved and my nose sour. I didn't. It wasn't me. She suddenly grabbed my hand, and I just shook it off. Fang Yueshi heard this and said in a crying voice, It's my fault, Yuli. Don't blame Miss Shin. It's because I didn't lock the wheelchair just now that this happened, Yueshi. You don't have to speak for Jinwei anymore, Li Yuli said coldly. I know what her temper is. All the women who have been close to me in these years have been driven away by her tricks. I couldn't help laughing, with tears in the corners of my eyes. So uncle, you don't believe me, right? Are you worthy of my trust? He asked back. Yes, I'm not worthy. Only Fang Yueshi is worthy. You believe whatever she says. As soon as I finished speaking, I pulled the suitcase to leave. Li Yuli asked the servant to stop me, and he said, apologize. I turned back to look at Li Yuli in disbelief. He repeated, Yueshi was wrong for no reason. You should apologize. What if I don't? I asked with tears in my eyes. I thought I could face such a scene again, and I would be able to face it calmly. But I still overestimated myself. When all the favoritism in the past turned into a sharp sword and stabbed me, it really hurts. You know my methods, Li Yuli said coldly. He looked at the servants behind me, and the servants looked at each other and were about to press my shoulders forward. I sneered at myself. I let go of the hand holding the suitcase and bowed to apologize to Fang Yueshi. I was wrong about this matter today. I shouldn't have shaken you off when you grabbed my hand. I'm sorry for almost making you fall. Fang Yueshi was stunned for 2 seconds, and Li Yuli's expression became solemn. I stood up and looked at Li Yuli. Uncle, is it okay? If not, kneel down, I said. Li Yuli's eyes were full of emotions, but he said nothing in the end. I went downstairs with my suitcase. As soon as I reached the first floor, Aunt Chen said, Mister, may be in a bad mood today. Miss, don't bother with Mister. We have seen how much Mister loves you over the years. She spoke for Li Yuli and tried to take my suitcase for me. I just smiled. I used to quarrel with Li Yuli. Aunt Chen always acted as a peacemaker, and she has been the same for so many years. But Li Yuli and I can no longer go back to the past. Miss, aren't you going to the guest room? She asked me in surprise. I shook my head. No, but sir, tell my uncle that I thank him for taking care of me. I won't bother him anymore. This life, that's all. I don't want to bear the pain of the last life anymore. After Li Yuli arranged for Fang Yueshi, he called Chen Ma and brought up the surveillance footage in the corridor. When Chen Ma came over, she was hesitant to speak. In fact, he believed in Shin Jinwei, although she had used small tricks to keep those women away from him over the years, but they were all insignificant. She knew what the bottom line was, so when he saw from the surveillance that it was Fang Yueshi who took the initiative to provoke Shin Jinwei, he didn't react much. He owed Fang Yueshi a life. As long as Fang Yueshi didn't go too far, he could let her do anything. I said, how could a lady hurt someone? Chen Ma said indignantly. Li Yuli rubbed his brows. Let's make something that Jinwei likes tonight. but the lady has left. Li Yuli was stunned. What? The lady asked me to tell you that she is grateful for your care in the past. She will not bother you again in the future, Mrs. Chen said it in a somewhat sarcastic tone. Li Yuli did not blame her, but just sighed tiredly. Jinwei has this temper, she can't stand any grievances. He asked Mrs. Chen to go out and prepare dinner first. He called Shin Jinwei, but Shin Jinwei didn't answer. He became more and more irritated and finally threw the phone on the desk. In fact, it started from half a month ago when he thought Shin Jinwei was going to confess to him. He began to feel inexplicably irritated, especially when he met Shin Jinwei's eyes and always heard her indifferent tone. He always felt as if something was out of control. Now, it seems that all the answers are about to come out. Li Yuli was able to find me. I was not surprised. There were still 7 days before reporting, and I returned to my home after leaving the villa. Li Yuli stood outside the yard, with scarlet flickering between his fingers and his brows furrowed. I saw him just after returning from the hospital, off work. I nodded, and said nothing more. The surroundings suddenly fell into a dead silence. He was waiting for me to continue speaking, but I actually had nothing to say, until his cell phone rang. It was Fang Yueshi's call. Li Yuli did not avoid me and swiped the answer button on the spot. Her weak crying came from the other side. Yuli, I had a nightmare. I dreamed of the earthquake, and I dreamed that I couldn't save you. Can you come back to accompany me? She asked cautiously. Li Yuli subconsciously looked at me. It was already dark at this time. I looked down at the elongated shadow on the ground with a calm expression. After a long time, I heard him say, I'll be back soon. The phone was hung up. Li Yuli took the opportunity to hold my hand, but I frowned and avoided him, and his movements froze. When he looked at me, his eyes were a little more confused. He probably forgot. The reason why we were so close in the past was because I regarded him as my sweetheart. Uncle, you have an aunt now. Let's not cross the line between us. My tone was indifferent, and Li Yuli sneered, withdrew his hand and pretended to be calm and put it in his pocket. I know you can't accept what's going on between me and Yueshi for a while, but it doesn't matter. I can wait until you can accept it before getting engaged to her. Now just treat it as you getting familiar with each other and adapting. I didn't speak, and was silent, since Fang Yueshi appeared in the last life. Li Yuli and I have never had a good talk. We quarreled as soon as we met. He scolded me for being shameless and falling in love with my uncle. He also said that I couldn't distinguish between family affection and love. He pushed me away step by step. But I faced the challenge like a copper wall and an iron wall. Even if I was stabbed all over by all the vicious words, my friends, his friends, they all advised me, Li Yuli doesn't like you. Why don't you believe it? He likes Fang Yueshi. I cried every time and said, no, Li Yuli loves me. On the day I became an adult at the age of 18, he thought I was asleep and kissed me secretly. He said that he would marry me when I was 22 years old. I always believed that Li Yuli wanted to marry Fang Yueshi just to repay his kindness. Until that day, the Xiao family wanted to take me away from the bar. I had no contact with the Xiao family and didn't understand why they wanted to arrest me. Until Xiao Lauer said that Xiao Lao had a cerebral infarction, I suddenly realized. Li Yuli once said that the people of the Xiao family he came to me and said that the Xiao family had dirty hands and asked me to keep a distance from them, but I never knew that the Xiao family came to me because of Mr. Xiao. They sincerely asked me to perform the operation. I cried and refused to leave. My white knuckles tightly grasped the corner of Li Yuli's clothes, but he said coldly, let go. He watched me being dragged away coldly and watched my fingers being broken one by one. He listened to my heart-wrenching screams. He didn't even frown. At that moment, I finally confirmed that Li Yuli didn't love me. What are you thinking about? Li Yuli's voice sounded. It brought me back to my thoughts. You should have made enough trouble these days. The last thing is over, Jin Yu. You are not a child anymore. After the voice fell, he opened the door of the co-pilot and looked at me. I stood there without moving, with an ugly smile on my face. I suddenly wanted to ask Li Yuli in my previous life, why could he be so cruel to watch me suffer, depressed, and die of depression? Even if he doesn't love me, I am still his niece who has been raised since childhood. Uncle, you were right that day. Any woman who appeared by your side in these years would be driven away by my little tricks. So for the safety of my aunt, I won't go back. Li Yuli frowned. Shin Jinwei, uncle. You know I like you, right? I interrupted Li Yuli calmly. His pupils shrank suddenly. My love has never been concealed in these years, and anyone who is not blind can know it. I believe Li Yuli knows it too, Jinwei. He looked at me embarrassedly. Don't worry, uncle. I won't do that again. I was ignorant before and mistook family affection for love, which made me laugh a lot. Now I've stopped the loss in time. I hope you'll forgive me. After I finished speaking, I smiled again. Li Yuli stood there blankly as if his soul had been taken away, as if the few words I just said were difficult to understand. He opened his lips and was about to speak. The phone in his pocket rang again. It was particularly harsh in the silent night, one after another. He seemed to have not come back to his senses yet, but I had already taken 2 steps back and turned to leave. Li Yuli looked at Shin Jinue's, gradually blurred back, and suddenly felt a little confused. He habitually took out a cigarette box from his pocket and lit another cigarette. He took a deep puff before he came back to his senses a little. He raised his head, the lights in the room on the second floor of the villa were on, and Shin Jinue's figure was reflected on the curtain. 3 years ago, Shin Jinue was 18 years old. On the day of his coming-of-age ceremony, he was drunk and entered Shin Jinue's room in a daze, looking at the sleeping little girl, the moment he was drunk. He kissed Shin Jinue for the first time, crossing the line. The little girl seemed to have had a beautiful dream, with a smile on her lips. He and the Shin family are old friends, and he is 7 years older than Shin Jinue, from childhood to adulthood. Although he acquiesced to Shin Jinue's crossing the line, he always reminded her not to confuse family affection with love. Don't mistake dependence for love. Shin Jinue didn't love him, and he didn't either. He let Shin Jinue act as a child bride, first to dispel those ignorant yellow-haired people, and second to reduce some peach scandals around him. Shin Jinue alone was enough to give him a headache, but when he saw that there were similar examples around him and they didn't end well, he backed off. A relationship that has changed cannot be restored to its original point. Fortunately, it should not be started. After he came to his senses, he went to Hong Kong on a business trip the next day. He did not expect to encounter an earthquake, and he was saved by a girl of his age. The girl was a dancer, and because of him, she lost her legs and dreams, and guilt and self-blame lingered in his heart. It was not difficult for him to support another girl with his financial resources. He supported her for 3 years, and no one knew about this except his assistant. The reason was simple: he was afraid that Shin Jinue would make trouble and cause trouble for Fang Yueshi this time. He brought Fang Yueshi back to Jingbei, firstly to promise his original request to marry her, and secondly, he knew that Shin Jinue was going to confess to him. He wanted Shin Jinue to give up when they knew it was difficult. They should not have crossed the line, and there was no future. But now, Shin Jinue backed out, but he began to regret it. When Li Yuli returned to the villa, Fang Yueshi was sitting in the living room waiting for him. She was wearing thin clothes. The night in Beijing North was particularly cold. After waiting all night, her hands were already frozen. Why don't you go back to the room? Li Yuli asked with a frown. Fang Yueshi pursed her lips and looked down at her phone. I called you many times, but you didn't answer. I'm worried about you. Yueshi, Li Yuli walked to the side of the sofa, then sat down and looked straight at Fang Yueshi. There was no warmth in his eyes. She raised her head. Jin Yu was raised by me. She has been following me all these years. Her temper was also spoiled by me. I told you when you decided to follow me, I owe you a life. You can give me anything to pay it back, but you can't touch Jin Yu. As he said that, Fang Yueshi's eyes suddenly turned red. She looked at Li Yuli aggrievedly. Yuli, do you suspect that I hurt Miss Shin? Li Yuli didn't say much, only one sentence was left. For Jin Yue's safety, there are many surveillance cameras in the villa. Fang Yueshi was stunned and didn't react for a long time. She thought that Li Yuli was on her side that day and believed her. But she didn't expect that her little trick had been seen through. After Li Yuli went upstairs, he didn't go back to his room. Instead, he went to Shin Jinue's previous room, after Fang Yueshi moved in. Everything in Shin Jinue's room changed. The dolls that Shin Jinue once cherished were put away, and the beautiful and cute decorations were replaced with simple ornaments. Mother Chin, Li Yuli called Mother Chin in. Mother Chin came over quickly and saw Li Yuli sitting at the desk and asked, Sir, what's wrong? He was about to speak, and his eyes inadvertently fell on the desk calendar in the gap of the desk. He bent down to pick it up. When he saw that the number 28 on the calendar was circled by a black fountain pen, he was stunned for a moment. Chen's mother also saw it with her sharp eyes. Isn't this your birthday, sir? I said. How could the lady really be angry with the sir? Hearing this, Li Yuli's mouth corners inadvertently pursed, and his fingertips rubbed the desk calendar. After a long silence, he put the desk calendar back. With a slightly happy tone, he said, renovate the guest room downstairs according to this pattern. Let Yueshi live on the first floor, clean up here, or follow the appearance of Jin Yu's original room. I'll pick her up in a few days. Chen's mother smiled and agreed, and Fang Yueshi, who was just at the door of the room, turned pale instantly. When there are still 5 days before reporting, my handover work has basically been completed, but I didn't expect Fang Yueshi to come to the hospital specifically to find me. After just a few days of not seeing her, she has become more like a broken beauty. Is there something you want to talk to me about? I put away the medical records in my hand and asked her. Fang Yueshi sat in a wheelchair, and the disgust in her eyes was exposed. No more pretending. She looked at me. Shin Jinwei, Yuli and I are about to get engaged. Can you stay away from Yuli, being a mistress who interferes with other people's feelings? Is this the family education in your family? My hand touching the pen paused, raised my eyelids and looked at the woman in front of me, with a sneer on the corner of my lips. Miss Fang, you'd better keep your mouth clean. I keep my mouth clean. That also requires you to do things cleanly. Shin Jinwei. Don't think I don't know that everyone knows that you like Shin Jinwei. You are moving out of the Li family now just to play hard to get. I tell you, Li Yuli doesn't like you. He will never like you in this life. He can't like his little niece. Fang Yueshi became more and more excited as she spoke. I couldn't help but sneer. In my last life, Fang Yueshi and I had hardly ever been alone together. I knew she was not a good person, she was like me, and would do anything for her lover. The calculations in her eyes and the tricks she played were all the things I was tired of playing in my last life, but I forgot at that time, only when you are about to lose something. Will you desperately try every means to catch it? In my last life, she provoked me with a few words, and even if I fought with her and was bruised all over, Li Yuli was unmoved. But in this life, I did nothing, but Li Yuli was happy to do it. These days, Li Yuli would send me messages from time to time, and he told me that my room was returned to me, it was intact, nothing had changed, and it was exactly the same as when I left. Just like before, he would order afternoon tea for me without fail. Do you think Li Yuli loves me? No. I also know that there are surveillance cameras in the villa. Li Yuli is a person who would not fail to check. But he did not react after checking. It can only mean that he acquiesced to Fang Yueshi bullying me. The change now is that he is not used to my leaving, that's all. There was a long silence. I said, I can't like him anymore. Fang Yueshi. Fang Yueshi was suddenly stunned, and her originally excited emotions slowly calmed down. What did you say? I admit that Li Yuli was very good in the past. From childhood to adulthood, whenever I was wronged, he would support me. He was afraid that I would cry and that I would be unhappy. Except for my parents, he is the best person in the world to me, so it is natural for me to like him. But that day he saw me crying, but forced me to apologize to you, and I no longer like him. Fang Yueshi seemed a little confused, looking at me with slightly red eyes. Just because of this, I nodded. Just because of this, if the person I like is willing to let me cry and let me be wronged, then he is not someone worthy of my love. Before Fang Yueshi left that day, she asked me again, is it true that no matter what Li Yuli does, you will not like him anymore? I replied, yes. Even if he died for me, I would not like him anymore. The night before reporting, as I was about to board the plane, Li Yuli sent me a message. I will pick you up later. I did not reply. The other party was still typing, and there was no follow-up. As I was about to put away my phone, Li Yuli's voice call popped up, and his voice was somewhat relaxed and cheerful. Jinwei, I will pick you up later. There may be some traffic jams. I did not answer. He was indeed on the way. The sound of horns on the road came over, and at this time the boarding announcement sounded again. The other party's breathing was obviously stagnant, after being stunned for 2 seconds. He asked in a very soft voice, Jinyu, are you at the airport? Yes. Why are you at the airport? Are you going on a business trip? Why didn't you tell me? Did you forget that tomorrow is my day? Uncle, I interrupted Li Yuli in a flat tone, and he was silent. I said again, I am going to walk the path my parents have walked, and I don't know when I will return. Thank you for your care over the years, uncle. After Rebirth, I thought about revenge on Li Yuli and let him taste the pain of having his fingers broken. I also thought about dragging those who hurt me to die together, but my life is so long, why should it be limited to love, hate, and vengeance? Li Yuli used to treat me wholeheartedly, it was true, let's just call it a draw. So now, I don't love or hate. Why so suddenly? After a long time, he asked me, I didn't answer, and he said, Jinwei, if you are here because of Yueshi, I can explain, I can let her go, but you can't leave. His tone was urgent, and the horn in the car was shrill. Jinwei, can you wait for me, I'll be there soon. No, it's too late. I laughed softly and hung up the phone. After the phone was turned off, the haze that weighed on my heart finally dissipated. Finally, everything came to an end. Li Yuli looked at the hung-up call and kept dialing, but in the end he only got a cold mechanical sound. Shin Jinwei turned off his phone. At this moment he was more sober than ever. Shin Jinwei really didn't want him anymore. When he realized this fact, he punched the steering wheel out of control and violently loosened his tie. The pain in his heart was suffocating, and he couldn't relieve it even if he gasped for air. He was about to call his assistant to check Shin Jinwei's flight. Fang Yueshi called again. Her voice was filled with tears, and she was begging him not to let her go. These days, he figured out a lot of things. The life-saving grace does not have to be paid in return. He can give Fang Yueshi enough money to ensure that she has no worries about food and clothing in this life, and she can give her whatever she wants, only his heart. He never realized how much Shin Jinwei occupied in his heart, until now, when Shin Jinwei left. He realized that he had almost left his whole heart, the girl who would cry at him, laugh at him, and make trouble at him. He always reminded Shin Jinwei in the tone of an elder not to confuse love, but he, after loving for more than 10 years, couldn't tell love from love. At this time, he couldn't wait to find Shin Jinwei. He wanted to tell her that he loved her very much. He was wrong before, and he won't do it again. After checking Shin Jinwei's flight, Li Yuli immediately booked a ticket. And when he was about to drive to the airport, he collided with a truck. He was in a car accident and was in a coma for a whole week. When he woke up, Fang Yueshi was the only one beside him. When Fang Yueshi met his gaze, she panicked unusually. Li Yuli's eyes suddenly became as cold as a pond. Cold and compelling, she trembled and said, Yuli, are you feeling unwell? Li Yuli didn't say anything, after unlocking the phone. He saw that the person who had been pinned to the top had lost contact for a week, and a mocking smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. His eyes became inexplicably empty. While he was in a coma, he had a very long dream. He dreamed that after Shin Jinhua confessed to him, he took Fang Yueshi home and told her that this was her little aunt. She dreamed that Shin Jinhua quarreled with him again and again, saying that she loved him, and fighting wits and courage with Fang Yueshi. Then she saw Shin Jinhua being dragged away from the bar, crying and asking for help. Her fingers were broken one by one, but she watched coldly because she promised Fang Yueshi that she would never care about Shin Jinhua again. She was so distressed that she was almost suffocated. But she still pretended not to care about anything. In the dream, Shin Jinhua's hand was broken and she could no longer hold the scalpel. He watched Shin Jinhua sitting in the ward every day, staring at the sky outside in a daze, and crying inexplicably. He saw her self-harming again, and the scars on her wrists were deeper and deeper. When Shin Jinhua said, "I want to be the best doctor in the future," he promised Shin Jinhua that he would always protect her and her golden hands. But in the end, he became the culprit. He didn't dare to see Shin Jinhua. He was afraid that Shin Jinhua would look at him with those cold eyes. And he was afraid that he would never see a trace of love in Shin Jinhua's eyes again. He regretted it after Shin Jinhua's first suicide, but he also knew that they could not go back. Shin Jinhua died at the age of 25, and he didn't marry Fang Yueshi in the end. Even if Fang Yueshi threatened him with her life, he remained indifferent. He insisted on marrying Shin Jinhua, even if everyone scolded him. "You are so shameless, you forced your little niece to death, and you still want to marry her." He did not look back. Their wedding was grand, but there was no guest. He held Shin Jinhua's ashes and completed the wedding, and finally committed suicide at the wedding. 3 months later, when Li Yuli found me, I was stunned. I just came out of the ward and looked up to see him. He has lost a lot of weight, and the suit that used to fit him tightly is no longer supported now. He is skinny. He forced a smile on his pale face, and I frowned slightly and kept my distance from him. How have you been lately?" he asked in a strange way. I nodded. I have heard about Li Yuli's affairs more or less. The day I went abroad, he had a car accident. After waking up from the accident, he wanted to send Fang Yueshi back to Hongcheng and cancelled his engagement with Fang Yueshi. Fang Yueshi disagreed and had an awkward quarrel with him. Li Yuli still refused to back down. Fang Yueshi was so angry that she stole the Li family's business secrets and sold them to 2 or 3 of his rivals. Overnight, he was attacked from all sides. The Li family's stocks were volatile, the capital chain was broken, and the project was stopped. He worked non-stop for 3 months before he could stabilize the situation. Fang Yueshi was sued by him and sentenced to 5 years. "When do you plan to return to Beijing?" he asked again, with a cautious tone. I smiled. "No." He was stunned. "Why, your home, uncle forgot. I don't have a home in Beijing anymore, after my parents died. My only relative was Li Yuli, but later Li Yuli didn't want me anymore. So, no matter in the last life or this life, I have no home." Li Yuli wanted to say something else, but I didn't listen anymore, and hurried into the operating room with a stretcher that just came in. 5 hours had passed when I came out, and I thought he should have left long ago. Unexpectedly, Li Yuli was still standing there, waiting for me persistently. His eyes were obscure and emotional. I didn't understand, and I didn't know what he wanted to do, until he followed me to the downstairs of the dormitory and asked me, "It must have hurt when your fingers were broken." I stopped, and my 5 fingers tightened subconsciously. He looked at my back, his voice slightly nasal. I said, "Why does my Jinyu suddenly dislike me?" "I'm sorry, Jinyu. I was wrong. I thought I didn't love you, but I..." He choked up halfway through his words. He covered his eyes. Tears flowed from his fingers, and his shoulders kept shaking. It was like the pain was extreme. "I'm just too scared, afraid that we started, but there would be no good ending. I'm afraid that we won't have any relationship in the end. I thought Fang Yueshi's appearance would only break your thoughts about me. I didn't expect it would turn out like this. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I made you suffer so much, and you were brave for so many years." He became more and more painful as he spoke, and he approached me carefully and slowly, and when he tried to pull my hand, I avoided it, and then looked back at Li Yuli. "There's no need to be entangled, right? I have a new life, and so will Li Yuli in the future, but we won't have any intersection anymore. Uncle, people always have to move forward." After the words fell, the last glimmer of light in Li Yuli's eyes was completely extinguished. "Jinwei," he smiled bitterly. "I'm sorry. Goodbye, uncle." When after Shin Jinhua said the last word, he turned around and left without hesitation. Li Yuli habitually took out a cigarette box from his pocket, took out a cigarette with trembling hands and tried to light it, but the lighter couldn't light it. The wind at the border was so strong that the sand blew into his eyes, and he couldn't stop crying. If he could be brave once, and be brave for Shin Jinhua regardless of the consequences, wouldn't there be such an ending? At least he had it. If they couldn't reach the end, it would mean that they were not destined to be together, but he was unwilling to pay the cost of trial and error. After Shin Jinhua returned to the dormitory, she walked to the balcony. Just as he raised his head, she seemed to feel his gaze, lowering their heads. The two looked at each other. She smiled calmly, put away all the clothes, and closed the balcony door again. Her movements were as smooth as flowing water, without any nostalgia, happy, unhappy. People, she would not be moved by him again. Thinking of this, he vomited a large pool of blood and fainted downstairs of her dormitory. One later, I heard about Li Yuli again 3 years later. He had lung cancer, in the late stage. On his deathbed, he hoped that I could see him for the last time. I looked at the full schedule of surgeries and regretfully refused. My friend said, before he died, Li Yuli notarized all his property and registered it under your name. He was really infatuated with you. How did you get to this point? I just smiled. At that time, I also wanted to ask why we got to this point. Now think about it, nothing matters anymore. Everyone has their own destiny when they are alive, and so do they when they die.